Hi guys, Ant from UK Fountain Pens. I wanted to run a theory past you. Those of you who have followed me for a while will know that I like to uh, obsessively, perhaps over obsessively, analyze my collecting habits and the shape of my collection and why I like the pens I do and why I sell the pens I do. And I had a bit of a thought last night, and it's taking shape a little bit this morning. It all started with this pen, the Esterbrook SD Nouveau Blue with a Kirk Spear needle point. Um, I've had several SDs over the years. I love them. I think they're great pens. They end up being really comfortable. They always write really well. They look nice. They've got the push to the sprung cap. The clip is excellent. The overall aesthetic and balance is great. Packaging, they're priced fairly. I like what the company's doing and the way it engages with the community. I should really have an SD in my permanent collection, but I always end up moving them on, just like I do a lot of the other kind of mid-tier pens that I own. So I ended up looking and thinking, well, why do I keep pens? And I've cut a couple of duplicates out of here, but I finally realised that it breaks down into three categories, and I haven't quite decided on the name of the third, but you've got the icons, you've got your makers, and then you've got your Luxe pens. And every pen that I own that sticks ends up fitting into one of these categories. Now, the icons, to me, they have to have been available for a long period, more or less unchanged. So these are not rare pens, not necessarily even expensive pens. They have to really define a category. They have to be sort of recognizable instantly. Anyone who is into pens will know these, and they have to be a timeless design. So naturally, Montblanc 149, Lamy 2000, Pilot Capless or Vanishing Point, Visconti Homo sapiens. These pens are, without overusing the word, iconic. Then for me, there's a whole category of pens where I've called them maker pens. They're the work of a single person or a small team, a small business. But it's not just any of the thousands of turners out there. I did write that fairly controversial piece called "Sticks of Plastic with a Nib on the End." I'm not talking about just turned pens here. These have to be makers in order to stick in my collection. Makers that have a vision and are doing something unique, whether that's unusual materials, small batch, unusual engineering. For me, it's all about having an affinity to that maker as doing something that I want to support. So I've had several Desiderata pens made out of wood. Pierre makes the clips in house. He makes his own piston mechanisms and pump mechanisms of various other types, as well as just doing this sort of really rustic look and feel that I like. Santini, I've raved about this giant pen before. It's not my aesthetic, but I just love the fact that Santini do their own nibs, their own feeds. They do hand enameling and all for a reasonable price, and it's just a few of them there. Husband and wife team. Kasama doing crazy shapes, crazy materials, very limited runs that pop up every now and again. They're not playing the sort of usual games that pen makers do. They just pop up, release a crazy design, and then disappear back into their local market for a while. And of course, Sean Design, which is Ian Sean and now a small team, doing pens that really look and feel like nothing else, and doing it in a way that is radically transparent as well. Lots of insight into the workshop and all the color ranges and all that stuff coming up. Then I've got this third group, and this is where the Venn diagram does have some overlaps, but these are what I call Luxe pens or Apex pens. And this is a pen where there is no expense spared in the material or the engineering, where you get a feeling of luxury and rarity. And I don't mean luxury in a look at me with my Louis Vuitton bag. I mean luxury in the sense of, this is really as good as it gets. And for me, if this is about affinity and about unique vision, and if this is about timeless defining categories approach, this is about feeling special. So I've got the Otto Hutt Design C. It's the Centenary pen, the Montblanc Martelet with its hammered silver finish, King of Pen Urushi, my custom Onoto with its giant nib and sterling silver trim, and just squeaking in here the Leonardo Cuspide, the Cuspide, with its spear finish material and tuned nib. Obviously, some of these pens fit elsewhere. You know, the Onoto Magna, pretty iconic and historic pen, could go into the icons category. The Martellet is based on the 146, which could also be an icon alongside the 149. But for me, it's the sort of finish and the materials and the limited availability, and as an indicator of that, high price. Now, where does the Estie fit in? Well, it's not an icon yet. It's a fairly generic pen shape. It's not a maker pen. It's not made by a small team. It's available from anywhere in high quantity, and it's certainly not a luxe pen. Yeah, this is just a turned plastic pen with a steel nib and a cartridge converter. So I love this pen. I think it's great, but the natural clusters that are formed in my collection, it doesn't fit. Conversely, you know, you can pick up this Namiki. It's on loan from Iguana Cell. Well, it's gold nib. It's got Maquillé. That would fit into the luxe camp if I decided to keep it. The Capillaris pen is possibly the best example of a maker pen. Single guy, very small batch, completely unique vision, rare and unusual approach to materials and design. Yeah, it's a perfect example of that. Another pen that I own that doesn't fit into the categories, much like the Estie, is the Lamy Dialogue CC. This is a pen that it's not an icon. You could argue that the radical retracting design of the Dialogue 3 is possibly getting there, but certainly not as iconic as the Pilot Capillus. It's not a maker pen. It's come from a large German manufacturer, and it's not luxe. There's nothing unique or rare about this. You can buy it from any retailer, and it's relatively affordable. So again, I really like this pen, but I can feel it edging out of my collection just because it doesn't kind of fit the purpose of my collection. And this to me also explains why I can have sort of such a diversity in look and feel in my collection, and also even diversity in price range and type of pen. Like these pens don't necessarily say you pick up this happens to have a King of Pen nib, but these two pens, Urushi, large, traditional, trim, versus a tiny plastic cylinder machined by some guy in the US. Like, they're very, very different pens, but if you see them as exemplars of the different categories I talked about, I think they fit. So I'd love to know your thoughts on this theory. I'll write something up as well once I've fleshed it out, and maybe I'll have a better name for it. But how does this make sense to you? Let me know in the comments.